The billionaire asks for a divorce right after the wedding, until one encounter changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us go back to our main character. The wedding had just ended. The music was still echoing faintly through the grand hall, and the last guests were drifting away, their laughter dissolving into the marble corridors. Fresh roses lined the aisle, and the scent of He loosened his tie slowly, as if delaying the moment, then spoke without turning around. "We should get a divorce." The words landed heavy, sharp, and unreal. She blinked, certain she had misheard him. Her heart thudded once, hard, against her ribs. Divorce. The word did not belong in this room. Not tonight. Not after vows and applause and promises spoken under crystal chandeliers. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice barely steady. He turned to face her then. His expression was calm, almost practiced, the same look he wore in boardrooms when billion-dollar decisions were finalized in seconds. "I am in love with someone else," he said. This marriage was never meant to last. At least, that was what he believed. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. The bride gripped the edge of the sofa behind her, the satin of her dress whispering as she steadied herself. She had known this was not a love match. She had signed the contract. She had read every clause. But she had believed, at the very least, in decency, in time, in the dignity of pretending. "Right after the wedding?" she asked. "You could not even wait one night?" He did not answer. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed. The celebration was officially over. She looked down at her hands. The ring sparkled, flawless, cold. Hours ago, cameras had flashed as he slipped it onto her finger, the world believing it was a fairy tale. No one knew it was a transaction. No one knew she had married him to save her family from collapse. No one knew that this man, the most powerful man she had ever met, had just decided she was already disposable. "I kept my end of the agreement," she said quietly. "I showed up. I smiled. I stood beside you. And I will keep mine," he replied. "You will be taken care of, financially." That was when it hit her. This was not about another woman. This was about control, about ending something before it could inconvenience him, about reminding her exactly where she stood. She lifted her chin, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "Then give me time," she said. "Do not turn this into a scandal on the same night you married me." He hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. It was so brief that most people would have missed it, but she saw it. "We will discuss the details later," he said. "For now, we will maintain appearances." Appearances. The word burned. As he walked past her toward the door, she realized something terrifying and clarifying all at once. This marriage was fake, yes, but the humiliation was real, and whatever happened next would not be decided by a contract alone. She had no idea that before the divorce papers were ever signed, one unexpected encounter would force him to see her not as a clause, not as a mistake, but as the one person he never should have let go. The morning after the wedding arrived quietly, almost cruel in its normalcy. Sunlight slipped through the sheer curtains of the guest wing, brushing against the white walls and expensive furniture that did not belong to her. The bride lay awake long before dawn, still wearing the ring, still hearing his words echo in her mind. Divorce, someone else, never meant to last. She rose slowly, careful not to disturb the silence. The house was vast, too quiet for a place meant to celebrate new beginnings. Every step she took across the marble floor reminded her that she was a guest here, not a partner. A name on paper, a role she had been hired to play. She changed out of the wedding dress by herself. No bridesmaids, no laughter, no champagne. The gown pooled at her feet like a memory she was not allowed to keep. As she folded it carefully and placed it back into its garment bag, her hands trembled, not from heartbreak, but from fear. This marriage had never been about love. It had been about survival. Only weeks earlier, she had stood in a cramped hospital hallway, staring at medical bills she could not pay. Her mother had squeezed her hand and tried to smile through the pain, apologizing for being a burden. At the same time, the bank notices had begun arriving at her apartment door, each one more final than the last. She had been running out of time. That was when the offer came. A contract marriage, a discreet arrangement, 1 year, maybe less. In exchange, her family would be secure, debts erased, treatment covered. No one would ever threaten to take her home away again. She had told herself it was a fair trade. She would give up romance, not dignity. She would play the role, not lose herself. But she had not expected this. She stepped into the hallway and nearly collided with a housekeeper, who froze the moment she saw her. "Good morning," the woman said politely, but her eyes flicked away, already unsure how to address her. "Good morning, Mrs. Billionaire." Or was it already too late for that? Downstairs, breakfast was waiting, a long table set for many, occupied by one. The billionaire sat at the far end, already dressed for work, scrolling through his phone as if nothing had happened. She took a seat across from him, keeping her back straight. "I will need time," she said, her voice calm despite the storm inside her. "If we are doing this, we do it cleanly." He looked up, studying her as if she were a line item that had suddenly become inconvenient. "You will have it," he replied. "Appearances matter." That word again. As she pushed her plate away untouched, she realized something painful but clarifying. This house was not a refuge, it was a waiting room, and she was waiting for a decision that would be made without her. Later that day, as the doors closed behind him and the house fell silent once more, she walked through rooms filled with art, awards, and portraits of power. Everywhere she looked, she saw his world. There was no place for hers. She paused by a mirror in the hallway, studying her reflection. The ring was still there, the title still applied. But beneath it all, she was still the woman who had agreed to this marriage to protect the people she loved. She touched the ring once, then let her hand fall. If this marriage was going to end, it would not end with her broken or begging. Whatever came next, she would face it standing on her own feet. And she had no idea that very soon, far from this house and far from his control, fate was preparing the encounter that would change everything he thought he knew about her. The contract had been signed long before the wedding dress was ever chosen. She remembered the room clearly. Neutral colors, polite smiles, a lawyer sliding papers across a polished table as if this were any other business arrangement. There had been no champagne, no congratulations, just terms, timelines, and silence. The billionaire had sat across from her then, composed and distant. He had explained everything without emotion, his voice steady, efficient. "This is a legal marriage for public purposes only," he said. "There will be no expectations beyond what is written here." The rules had been clear. No emotional involvement, no interference in each other's personal lives. Appear together only when necessary. Absolute discretion. And one final line, spoken almost as an afterthought. "This arrangement can be terminated at any time." She had hesitated only once, her fingers hovering over the page. Not because she dreamed of love, but because she understood what giving up choice truly meant. Still, she signed. Because her family needed her. Because pride did not pay hospital bills. Now, standing alone in the massive house, she realized how carefully those rules had been designed. Not to protect both of them, only him. The days that followed settled into an uncomfortable rhythm. They lived under the same roof, but on separate schedules. He left early, returned late. When they crossed paths, their conversations were brief and practical, spoken like co-workers who shared an office but nothing else. The staff watched closely. Some were polite, others were distant, uncertain where she belonged. She noticed the way conversations stopped when she entered a room, the way eyes followed her movements, measuring her worth. She did not complain. She did not ask for favors. She kept to herself, determined not to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her uncomfortable. One afternoon, she found a thin folder placed neatly on the desk in her room. Inside were copies of the contract, already marked with tabs, a reminder, or a warning. She sat on the edge of the bed and read every page again, slower this time. Each clause felt heavier now, more personal. This was the framework of her marriage. Not vows, not promises, boundaries. Later that evening, she joined him in the living room for the first time since the wedding night. He was reviewing documents, his attention divided between his tablet and a quiet phone call. She waited until he finished. "I want to be clear," she said. "I will not embarrass you. I will not complicate your life. But I will not be treated like a mistake." He looked up, surprised by her calm. "You agreed to the terms," he replied. "I agreed to a contract," she said, "not to humiliation." Something flickered in his expression. Not guilt, not sympathy, something closer to annoyance. "You will be respected," he said finally, "as long as you respect the agreement." That night, she lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. The house felt colder than before, not because of what he had said, but because of what he had not. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the timing, the cruelty of asking for a divorce, hours after calling her his wife. She turned onto her side, facing the window. The city lights blinked in the distance, indifferent and endless. Somewhere out there was the life she had paused, the version of herself that had believed endurance was enough. She did not know how long this arrangement would last. Days, weeks, a few careful months. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This contract might define their marriage on paper, but it would not define her. And sooner than either of them expected, the rigid lines of this agreement would be tested by something no clause could control. The distance between them grew sharper with each passing day. They shared the same address, the same last name on paper, yet lived as if separated by walls no architect had drawn. She learned his routines quickly. He left before sunrise. He returned after dark. Meetings, dinners, events she was not invited to attend. The marriage existed only when it was required. At first, she tried to stay invisible. She kept to the guest wing, spending her mornings reading or answering calls from the hospital, carefully hiding her worry behind steady reassurances. In the afternoons, she walked the grounds alone, tracing the edge of a life that was never meant to include her. But invisibility came at a cost. The staff treated her with professional politeness, nothing more. Instructions were followed, but warmth was withheld. She noticed the way invitations were relayed to him, not to her. The way questions about household decisions bypassed her entirely. One evening, she overheard two voices in the corridor outside the study. "She will not be here long," someone said quietly. "She never is," another replied. She did not stop walking. She did not turn around. Pride carried her forward, even as the words settled deep. That night, she attended her first formal event by his side since the wedding. A charity gala, carefully selected for appearances. She wore a simple black dress, elegant but restrained. When she stepped into the car, he barely glanced up from his phone. At the venue, cameras flashed. Hands were shaken. Smiles were exchanged. He placed his hand at the small of her back, only when the crowd was watching, removing it the moment they turned away. She played her role perfectly. When a donor asked how they met, she answered gracefully. When another complimented her poise, she smiled and thanked them. No one would ever guess that the man beside her had already asked for a divorce. Inside, something hardened. Later, as they stood apart near the balcony overlooking the city, she watched him laugh with someone else, relaxed in a way he never was with her. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of what this marriage truly was. She was not his partner. She was a placeholder. On the drive home, silence filled the car. "I would like to start volunteering," she said suddenly. He glanced at her, surprised. "Volunteering?" "Yes," she replied. "If I'm going to be part of this public image, I want it to mean something." He considered her for a moment, then nodded. "Do what you want, just keep it discreet." Discreet. Always that word. The next morning, she left the house on her own for the first time since the wedding. No driver, no schedule approved by him. She went somewhere familiar, somewhere that reminded her who she had been before contracts and cameras, the hospital. She visited her mother, holding her hand, listening to her breathe. She spoke softly, carefully avoiding any mention of the marriage falling apart. Her mother smiled and told her how proud she was, how relieved she felt knowing her daughter was safe. Safe. The word stung. As she left the hospital, she paused at the entrance, watching people pass by. Nurses, patients, families. Ordinary lives, heavy with real struggles. For the first time in weeks, she felt grounded. She did not know it yet, but this decision, this quiet step back into the world she came from, was the beginning of a shift, a crack in the careful distance he had built. And soon, in a place far removed from wealth and power, their paths would cross in a way neither of them could control. She did not plan the encounter. That was what made it impossible to forget. The community center sat between a laundromat and a closed grocery store. its faded sign easy to miss unless you were looking for it. She had signed up to volunteer there after leaving the hospital, drawn by a flyer taped to a bus stop. Food distribution, weekend outreach, no cameras, no donors in tuxedos, just need. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. Folding tables lined the walls. Volunteers moved quickly, packing bags with canned goods and bottled water. No one asked her last name. No one cared who she was married to. For the first time in weeks, that felt like relief. She rolled up her sleeves and joined them. Hours passed unnoticed. She listened to stories. A man who had lost his job after an injury. A woman raising 2 grandchildren on a fixed income. People thanked her, not because she was important, but because she showed up. She was handing a bag to an elderly man when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Is this line moving?" She froze. Slowly, she turned. He stood there in a dark jacket and baseball cap. No driver in sight, no assistants hovering nearby. If she had passed him on the street, she might not have recognized him. But she did, instantly. The billionaire looked around, momentarily disoriented, as if he had stepped into the wrong room. "What are you doing here?" she asked before she could stop herself. His eyes narrowed slightly, surprised. "I could ask you the same thing." "I volunteer here," she replied. "What about you?" He hesitated. A meeting nearby ended early. I saw the sign. It was the first time he had ever explained himself to her. An awkward silence settled between them. Around them, life continued. Voices, movement, the hum of people helping and being helped. No one paid them any attention. She gestured toward the table. "If you were going to stand there, you might as well make yourself useful." Something unreadable crossed his face. Then, without another word, he set down his phone and stepped forward. He followed her instructions clumsily at first, struggling with the rhythm of the work. She corrected him once, gently. He did not argue. As they worked side by side, she noticed the change in him, the way his shoulders relaxed, the way he listened when people spoke, truly listened, without checking the time. A woman thanked him, squeezing his hand. He looked startled, then nodded. "You come here often?" he asked quietly. "Today is my first day," she said, "but it will not be my last." He glanced at her, as if seeing her for the first time without the frame he had built around her. Later, outside the center, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Volunteers said their goodbyes. The moment stretched, unguarded. "I did not know you were like this," he said finally. She met his gaze, steady. "You did not ask." For once, he had no response. As he watched her walk away, carrying nothing but her purse and a quiet sense of purpose, something shifted. This encounter was not part of any agreement. There was no contract for it, no clause to protect him from the realization forming in his mind. The woman he had planned to divorce was not who he thought she was, and that truth would not let him go. The encounter did not leave him the way she did. For the rest of that evening, the billionaire found himself distracted in a way he had not experienced in years. He sat through meetings without hearing half of what was said. Numbers blurred on screens. Conversations drifted past him. Again and again, his mind returned to the community center, to the way she had spoken to people without performing, to the way she had looked at him, not impressed, not intimidated, simply honest. That night, he came home earlier than usual. She was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, quietly washing a mug. She did not look surprised to see him. That, somehow, unsettled him more than anger would have. "You did not tell me you volunteered," he said. She set the mug down and turned. "You did not ask." The words echoed his own from earlier, and he felt the weight of them now. "I did not expect to see you there," he admitted. "I did not expect you to stay," she replied. They stood a few feet apart, the space between them no longer empty, but charged with something neither of them was ready to name. Over the next few days, he noticed things he had ignored before. A phone call she took late at night, her voice low and steady, as she reassured someone on the other end. The way she declined offers from the staff politely but firmly, choosing to do things herself. The absence of complaint, even when she was clearly exhausted. He asked his assistant, almost without thinking, to look into the community center. "What for?" she asked. "General interest," he replied, then paused. "And check her background again." The report came back quickly, too quickly. No scandals, no hidden agendas, no calculated climb into his world. just medical bills, student loans, and a long history of quiet responsibility. Caring for family, working extra shifts, turning down opportunities that came with conditions she refused to accept. He read the file twice. Meanwhile, she continued her routine, unaware of the internal shift taking place. She returned to the community center, again and again, grounding herself in work that required no explanation. She did not speak about him. She did not ask where she stood. One afternoon, she arrived home to find him waiting in the living room. "You could have taken the money," he said without preamble. "There are easier ways to help people." She stopped walking. "I did not want easier." He studied her, searching for something familiar and failing to find it. "There are expectations," he said. "Being associated with me comes with them." "I know," she replied. "That is why I keep my name off the flyers." Silence followed. This time, it did not feel hostile. It felt reflective. Later that evening, his phone buzzed with a message. The woman he claimed to love wanted to meet. She had never challenged him. She fit neatly into his life, into his schedule, into the man he had already decided to be. For a long time, he had mistaken that comfort for love, wanted clarity, wanted reassurance. He stared at the screen longer than he should have. Across the room, his wife sat curled into a chair, reading, unaware of the choice forming in his mind. She looked peaceful, self-contained, real. For the first time, he wondered when he had decided she was temporary, and more importantly, why the idea of losing her now felt like a mistake he could not afford to make. The breaking point came sooner than either of them expected. It began with a headline. She saw it on a tablet left open in the living room, a business article praising his latest acquisition. His photo filled the screen, confident and composed. Beneath it, a smaller image caught her eye. A woman stepping out of a restaurant beside him, her hand resting familiarly on his arm. The caption was brief, careless. A long-time companion. Her chest tightened, not with surprise but with clarity. She had told herself she did not care, that this marriage was only a contract. But seeing it written so casually, reduced to a caption beneath his success, hurt more than she was prepared to admit. So this was the truth he had never corrected. The someone else he had mentioned on their wedding night had never disappeared. She had simply remained hidden, protected by silence and power. That evening, he returned home to find the house unusually still. She was waiting for him in the study, the contract folder laid neatly on the desk between them. Not thrown, not crumpled, deliberate. "I saw the article," she said calmly. He did not pretend not to understand. His jaw tightened, and he set his keys down slowly. "It is not what it looks like," he began. She lifted a hand, stopping him. "Do not insult me by saying that." Silence filled the room, heavy and final. "You told me you loved someone else," she continued. "You asked for a divorce before the wedding flowers had wilted. I accepted that truth. What I did not accept was being made a shield." He frowned. "A shield?" "For your reputation," she said. "For your image. I stood beside you while you continued a life you never ended." His voice dropped. "You knew this was complicated." "I knew it was fake," she replied. "I did not know it would be dishonest." That word landed hard. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration rising. "You are overreacting." She stood then, the movement controlled but resolute. "No," she said. "I am finally reacting." She pushed the folder toward him. "I want out, not because of another woman, but because I refuse to be treated like a placeholder." For a moment he looked stunned. This was not how it was supposed to go. He was used to being the one who decided when things ended. "You cannot just walk away," he said. "This marriage still serves a purpose." She met his gaze, unwavering. "It no longer serves mine." The words struck something deep. Anger flared, sharp and defensive. "You knew what you signed up for," he snapped. "You knew who I was." "Yes," she said quietly. "And I believed you knew who I was marrying." That was when it broke. All the unspoken resentment, the humiliation she had swallowed, the patience she had extended without acknowledgement. It surged to the surface, not as a scream, but as resolve. "I will leave," she said. "Tonight." He stared at her, disbelief giving way to something dangerously close to panic. "This will cause problems," he said. "Questions." "Let them ask," she replied. "I am done being your answer." She turned and walked toward the door, every step steady. Halfway there, she paused, not looking back. "I did not fall in love with you," she said, "but I believed you were capable of respect. That was my mistake." The door closed softly behind her. Alone in the study, surrounded by wealth and silence, he realized something far more unsettling than scandal or loss of control. For the first time, he had not chosen to end the marriage. She had. And the possibility that she might never come back hit him harder than any deal he had ever lost. He did not sleep that night. The house felt different without her presence, as if something essential had been removed, and the emptiness left behind was louder than any argument. He walked through rooms he had designed to impress, to control, to command respect. None of it mattered now. By morning, the headlines had shifted. Speculation, questions, whispers about the sudden absence of his wife at upcoming events. His assistant hovered, careful, waiting for direction. "Cancel everything," he said finally. "Clear my schedule." She was not hiding. She had returned to a small apartment near the hospital, the same one she had kept even after the wedding, just in case. She spent the day helping her mother, cooking simple meals, answering calls from the community center. She did not cry. She felt lighter than she had in weeks. That afternoon, she received a message from the center. There was a problem. Funding had been pulled. The weekend outreach was at risk. She arrived to find volunteers anxious, supplies stacked but uncertain. She stepped in without hesitation, organizing, calling local contacts, promising solutions she did not yet have. An hour later, the doors opened. He walked in, no jacket, no entourage, carrying nothing but a folded piece of paper in his hand. The room fell quiet. She turned, disbelief flashing across her face. "You should not be here." "I know," he said, "but I am." He stepped forward, his voice steady but unguarded. "I pulled the funding." The decision had already cost him. 2 partners had called that morning. One deal was now uncertain. A murmur rippled through the room. "And I reinstated it," he continued, "with no conditions, no naming rights, no press." She stared at him, searching for manipulation and finding none. "This is not how you fix things," she said. "No," he agreed, "but it is how I start taking responsibility." He turned to the volunteers. "This place matters, not because it looks good, but because it does good, and it will continue." People slowly returned to their work, giving them space. He faced her again. "I ended things with her, completely, not because you asked, but because I finally understood what I was losing." She folded her arms. "And you think this grand gesture changes that?" "No," he said quietly. "I think it proves I am willing to change without expecting forgiveness." She said nothing. Later that evening, he requested a meeting, not at the house, not at his office, at the community center after hours. He stood before a small group, board members, staff, press he had invited himself. "I made a mistake," he said publicly. "I treated my marriage like a contract instead of a commitment. That ends now." He turned to her. "I am not asking you to come back. I am asking you to see me choose you when it costs me something." The room was silent. She took a breath. "If there is any future," she said, "it will not be because you saved me. It will be because you met me as an equal." He nodded. "That is the only future I want." For the first time, the power between them shifted. Not because he demanded it, but because he earned the right to ask. The morning light felt different this time. She stood outside the community center, watching volunteers arrive, the familiar rhythm of purpose settling her thoughts. Nothing had been promised. Nothing had been repaired overnight, and yet something fundamental had shifted. He arrived quietly, without announcement. Not as the billionaire, not as the man who once controlled every outcome, just as himself. They sat across from each other at a small table, coffee cooling between them. No lawyers, no contracts, no witnesses. "I filed the paperwork," he said first. "Not for divorce, to amend the agreement. There is no agreement anymore." She studied his face, searching for certainty where there had once been calculation. "I am not asking you to come back," he continued. "I am asking you to start again, without leverage, without protection. If you say no, I will accept it." She exhaled slowly. "For weeks," she said, "I lived in your world, on your terms. Every choice belonged to you. If this is real, that cannot happen again." "It will not," he said. "I am done hiding behind power." They did not touch. They did not rush. They talked instead, about boundaries, about mistakes, about the difference between wealth and worth. For the first time, the conversation felt balanced. Later that day, they walked through the city together. No cameras, no staff, just two people navigating a future neither of them had planned. Weeks passed. They did not move back into the mansion. She kept her apartment. He respected that. He showed up when he said he would. He listened more than he spoke. He learned. At a charity event months later, she stood beside him again, not because she was required to, but because she chose to. When someone asked how they met, he smiled. "I married her for the wrong reasons," he said honestly. "Appearances used to matter to me," he continued. "She taught me what actually does, and I am grateful she gave me the chance to learn how to love her for the right ones." There were no headlines this time, no speculation, just truth. On a quiet evening, back at the community center where everything had changed, he stopped her at the door. "This time," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket, "there is no contract, no obligation, just me." Inside was a simple ring, not larger, not louder, just meaningful. "I am choosing you," he said, "not because I need you, but because I want to stand beside you, equally, for the rest of my life." She did not answer right away. Then she smiled, not carefully, not cautiously, but fully. "Yes," she said, "on my terms, together." They did not rush into a perfect ending. They built it, and the marriage that began as a transaction became something far rarer, a choice.